Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Galactic Armory. Today, we've got a very special helmet for you, Bacara from the Clone Wars. My name is Aaron. Here with me again is Jamie.
Hey folks. So this is a helmet that's a long time coming, having our own G.A. Bacara.
Right, I made a Bacara helmet so long ago. If you want to go back and watch that video, feel free. I will not, because I will die from cringe. But yes, we definitely wanted to make our own GA Bacara helmet, and Jamie, I just think you did an outstanding job of this. The build process for this helmet was pretty similar to a lot of our other builds, so I thought during all this sanding and smoothing of this helmet, that using our typical methods like resin and the UV light, mixing Bondo with acetone, sanding with the mouse sander, and then wet sanding up to, what'd you do, 800?
800, that's right.
That's all very typical, and we do it in a lot of other tutorial videos. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about Bacara as a clone. We don't really know much about him. We saw him for about 3 seconds in Revenge of the Sith, but he's got kind of an interesting backstory, isn't that right?
Yeah, those 3 seconds really cemented him as a character that they clearly worked off of when they were developing his lore. He appears to be not a very nice guy.
And despite being a commander, like the same rank as Commander Cody, for example, did not hang out with other commanders very often.
Yeah, and this isn't headcanon or anything. This is in the official lore straight off of Wikipedia. But we find him really interesting because he didn't train really with the other clones. He trained with like sheriffs on Concord Dawn, Mandalorian sheriffs. And that really created like a sense of justice and rules following that cemented his position in the Grand Army of the Republic.
I really wish we could see this character in like the Clone Wars or something, just because there aren't a lot of clones that just kind of suck. Like that are just, unredeemable. They only do like very precise stuff, and they're kind of very good pre-Empire clones. Like they would have done well in the Empire, I think.
Yeah, and this is a real difference compared to Rex or Cody, which have this charisma. But
I think he's very much like Fox from the Coruscant Guard, He's there to do a job, and that's it.
Yeah, apparently when he killed Ki-Adi-Mundi, he was like, "Sweet, good job, folks." He felt a lot of satisfaction from the job.
Yeah, very efficient about it, lining up his troops, and I can't say I'm remorseful for Ki-Adi-Mundi's fate. He was not my favorite Jedi, nor I think a lot of people's.
Yeah, and so those 3 seconds during Order 66 really cemented him as a cool-looking clone to us.
And he's got a lot of unique properties to his helmet. He's got those flaps, and he runs the Galactic Marines, which are completely different looking from other clone legions.
Yeah, he almost has an AT-AT tank commander vibe with the swoop around the back of his helmet and the radio and everything. It's a really cool design, and it was fun to work off of, especially related to all the weathering you can see on him. He leads from the front.
Yes, this is probably one of the more weathered clones you can do. And that's official Lucasfilm reference. When we see him on Mygeeto, he is just caked in all sorts of dirt and black scarring. You can totally see it all over his helmet.
Yeah, that black scarring in particular is different to a lot of the clones that you see, which usually just, a little bit grimy, dirt in the recesses, and some shadowing here or there. But no, this guy is scarred up, and it created a really fun opportunity to just go ham on all the usual weathering methods, which we'll show you across this video.
We do see that a little bit in the lore. It was mentioned that he likes to lead from the front, despite being a martial commander.
Yeah, despite the regulations, this guy leads from the front, and that's why he was more than prepared to set up a firing line on Ki-Adi.
He might not have got along with a lot of the other clones. I believe he got along well with Neo.
That's
Commander
right.
Neo.
Another loner.
But you can't deny the fact that he looks like a total badass and is a very cool clone.
Yeah, so to create the effect that this guy's famous for and to get the order of operations right, I went for a very specific method. So as we see, the majority of this clone is just plain white, except for those big old cheek flaps. So I wanted to start with those, completely mask off all the white on this faceplate, and get a flat gray primer on that, and immediately, and this is rare, immediately start applying my details onto this piece. just to save myself time later remasking items and having to go back to stop any overspray onto the white. I waited for everything to cure first and then went in reverse. I then started to cover up the gray and apply the white all over. And this method allowed me to save so much time later and waiting for paint to cure and
having to remask the whole thing.
that's it, which is a real ache. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting elements to this helmet that you don't really see on other clones. For instance, the gray band on the back of his neck is two-toned. Couldn't explain it.
Yeah.
We don't know why.
But you can very clearly see it on the references.
Yeah, so what I did, again, dealing with a efficient order of operation here, I apply a gray across this whole band, make sure everything's masked off, using some saran wrap to save some time. And then when that's completely dry, I just get like 2 centimeters, close to 2/3 of an inch, and just create a line along the lower half and just mask up the top half, just to save time and not have to remask everything later. And just apply a black band around that rim.
Yeah, never seen it on any other clone, but Bacara, you can see it quite well.
He's there, and we're nothing but accurate here.
So now that you've got the base colors of the helmet all painted up, you've got to put this thing together, right?
Yeah, I like to make sure that all these pieces are together when they get weathered, just to make sure that everything's consistent across the entire helmet. So this is a fantastic file, if I do say so. It allows a nice overlap and a hide a lot of the seams naturally. So I just apply a small amount of super glue, attach the front plate to the pegs, and just hit it with a little bit of activator, and it's immediately attached.
Bacara was a bit of a design challenge for us. We initially had that overhang of the eyebrows kind of as part of the face, but that would always leave it to weak spots. And so attaching that eyebrow and kind of sinking in the dome into the back and making it all one uniform piece really makes just slapping the face on there a lot easier.
Yeah, you don't even need to really apply anything to fill those gaps because it's all hidden underneath that big scoop. So the last little detail piece that we need to add is just a small pop of red. We used a caboose red, which has some purple tones by Archive X.
One of my favorite names for a paint color.
We quickly apply a couple thin coats into those little recesses above his right eye, wait for that to dry, and that's pretty much it. It is just a 3 or 4 colors across this entire helmet. But there's one way to make this thing pop, and it is through weathering.
That's the exciting part about this helmet. What are you going to do first?
So I'm going to lay down a lot of paper towel because we have some acrylic wash to use. We were going to use an oil paint, but we just didn't know how the Rust-Oleum paint would react to the mineral spirits. So we just used the old tried and true method of a simple black acrylic paint, just a children's hobby paint, and just some water, and just coated the entire thing with it, making sure to leave it for a couple seconds to stain the helmet beneath it, especially that white, and just randomly mop it off. No consistent streaks, don't get the surface texture of the paper towel on it. Just slap it about.
You want to do short streaks too. Like you don't want really long draws.
Exactly. And just be inconsistent. Consistently inconsistent.
Right.
With
Imagine just rubbing this helmet in the dirt and just the chaos of the world dirtying it up.
That's it. Make it completely inconsistent and make sure that don't go too hard because you can always just go back and apply more layers.
But once the black wash is done, I'm going to do a little bit of extra weathering with an airbrush.
Yeah, there's a lot of deep pitted recesses in this helmet, and there's a lot of layers and interesting angles on it that you can really see pop. And an airbrush is a perfect way to create natural shadow or unnatural shadow. And this helmet is fantastic for that. There are, especially around the cheek flaps, around those ear cupolas, the back of the helmet, just accenting these flat areas by hyper-focusing on the recessed areas. When you apply that, you can also enhance this effect by using a small amount of water or airbrush cleaner and just pushing the paint further into those recesses with a paper towel. It'll immediately dry, but it will almost cake in the dirt.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Like we mentioned before, Bacara has a lot of those scorch marks in his helmet. How are you going to do those?
So this is where we break out the oil paint, because oil paint is highly pigmented compared to an acrylic. And when you apply a small amount of mineral spirits, it becomes extremely free-flowing, so you get a lot of control. It clings to a brush really well, so you can get some really sharp streaks, some real micro little dots all across the helmet. And so we just matched some official ILM concept art of Bacara and just matched all the scratches 1-to-1 across the helmet. And if you ever mess up with an oil paint, you can just use a small amount of mineral spirits and just wipe it straight off. It's a really forgiving medium, especially when you're mixing it with other things like acrylic washes, because you will not remove the acrylic wash by using a small amount of mineral spirits.
That's right.
So it creates a great layering effect, and you get deep dark scratches that you just want to make look random and very purposeful, especially on edges, just to create real depth and battle wear.
Yeah, it really gives the helmet a lot of variety in its weathering, which makes a lot of sense. You know, you'd be in a climate with all sorts of different dirty things, and all those dirty things would combine onto your helmet.
Especially if you're leading from the front.
Exactly. So, absolutely beautiful job on the weathering. There's just a few other little details before this helmet's all finished.
Yeah, so we've got our greeblies in before we started. That's the vocoder at the front and the aerators. But then we have one last piece on the side, and that is a very iconic looking antenna, which we snap using just some tin snips to the, generally the right measurement. Then we just super glue that into the holder on the left ear.
It's a 2mm diameter metal, just like a hobby metal rod.
Yeah, and just to make sure no one trips and gets stabbed on it, we add a little rubber tip, which instantly makes it look like a proper antenna.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So once you've done all that weathering, you want to make sure that that is sealed on and not going anywhere, especially regarding that oil paint, which will take a long time to dry. But you can help that process along by sealing it in using a matte clear coat. And that we just used a Rust-Oleum matte clear coat, dusted it over the whole thing, and give that a good amount of time to dry, because you don't want to mess up your surface, especially regarding the oil painted scratches.
Right. It's a great way to lock in all of the paint on the helmet, essentially, and in this case, not change the color. It's barely noticeable, but really helps protect all the hard work that you just did. So with the antenna in, we're going to need to fill in some of those holes on the face.
Yeah, around the teeth, there is a grill mesh effect. Everyone has their own preferred method for this. Some people like to use mosquito netting or screen door netting. I prefer to use a more matte material and a darker material, which is a computer fan filter cover. And you get them in packs of like 15 for $3. And I've only ever bought one pack of them my entire prop making career.
You don't need a lot for a clone.
Yeah, and I think it adds this really nice semi-metallic, semi-matte sort of satiny finish that creates a nice visual pop on the face because it's a mixed media. So I just apply that with some hot glue. A really simple process, use as much or as little as you need, and just make sure to not put any hot glue onto the showing area, because you will see that through the teeth.
And the last thing's the visor, right? We're going to be using a Hobart face shield, shade 3. We do offer these in the shop as well. So you'll find links to the Hobart face shield, the files, the 3D prints, all in the description.
Yeah, and then we just use one of our visor templates. We mark around it using a silver Sharpie, cut it out with some tin snips. And this is a fantastic guide to get you pretty close to what is needed to get a friction fit in this helmet without any glue. You can remove it later. You can replace it, polish it.
There's a nice ridge modeled into the model itself, and that is what actually holds it. Well, Jamie, I will say this looks a lot better than the version I did back in, what was it, probably 2019 now?
I remember watching
that. That was one of my first ones. And so I'm very fond of Bacara, the helmet look. Not so much the character. He's okay. I do wish we could see more of him in Star Wars media.
Oh, yeah. Bad Batch Season 3, maybe?
Maybe. I could see him like going to try and rescue him and some of the other commanders, and him just telling to screw off. Like, I think that fits in his personality. I think he'd make a good Empire soldier.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Which isn't necessarily a compliment, but
yeah, this was a fantastic project. The helmet, I think, looks as close as possible that I could have made it to the film itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We were blessed with some great references of basically a 360 view of the helmet. And so that is always super helpful for matching the paint scheme and the model itself. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed watching. I was so happy with how this helmet came out. It's great to revisit it after so long with everything that we've learned in the years since. So I hope you learned something as well. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you're feeling confident enough to take on a project like this yourself. Until then, thank you again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.